Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the TBA Legislative Update podcast. I'm Berkley Schwarz here with Brad Lampley and missing our third part member of the team, Ashley Harmon, who had a conflict and couldn't come today. So
You don't have your chainsaw this week. We promised everybody that we would get a chainsawing exhibition from you, and we don't have that this week. So what's
I did all the chainsawing last week, Brad. So no need for it anymore.
you
All
clearly
the trees.
you watched this last week, and so we had a little bit of fun at your expense about the chainsawing. But if you, I guess, did you say before we came on the other, if you turn, like if you put the microphone over by the window, that you can actually hear chainsawing going on right now in your neighborhood?
It's the background of my life. It's the sound of chainsaws constantly running all the time. So but yeah, I want to say that I listened to the podcast that y'all did last week and it was really good and I thoroughly enjoyed it and you and Ashley did great. And I feel sometimes, I told you this earlier, that you and I talk so much, Ashley can't get a word in. And that's a shame because she has a lot to offer and she's really good.
Well, I think you and I have a great solution for that, Berkeley, is that we just don't do it anymore and we let her do it solo. So
It can just become the Ashley podcast and then we'll see
I
how
will
that goes.
say, you know how I guess it's on whatever is Twitter, Facebook, whatever, where you mindlessly scroll through the videos. And mine are usually like college football stuff, golf lessons, that sort of thing. Somehow the algorithm now has every once in a while, all of a sudden this video will pop up and it scares you to death. Like, oh my God, that's us. And then,
You're like, that's me.
oh man,
Yeah.
and then you're criticizing every single thing you do. So I'm going to be more focused on the camera this week, that tends to be an early season problem. I
Yeah.
think I tend to look around too much, and those of you who watch on the video will probably attest to that. So
And the
we're going to be
question,
better. We're going to be better.
we're going to be better podcasters slash video makers. But, I didn't realize that Bar Buzz, which is another podcast that they do, isn't filmed. So they're not on camera. And I don't know how we got so lucky to be on camera every week because I think this whole podcast situation would be a lot easier if we didn't have to get ready for it. But anyway.
I agree.
All right. So let's talk about this week at the legislature, what's happening, what's going on. This was a very busy week. There's a lot going on. The House and the Senate both were having committee meetings, with like 30 bills, maybe even more on their agendas. I think Senate Judiciary lasted until right at 6 on Tuesday. So, yeah. There was a lot going on, a lot of bills that we think Tennessee lawyers would care about. But I don't know. Why don't you hit the high?
I will say it's the time of year where, and we apologize in advance to our sections. I know there are a couple people from sections going, wait a minute, you sent me this amendment an hour ago when the bill's up tomorrow. It's like, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is this time of year. So if we want to weigh in, sometimes we're going to do it under less than optimal timing. So thank you in advance to the sections that are constantly reviewing all the legislation we're sending you. And we apologize about the timing. That's just the process. A lot of times you won't get a bill till maybe even Tuesday, and the bill might be later up up later that day. So that's just the process, and we apologize. But thanks to everybody that weighed in. I know we had a lot of emails flying back and forth this week. By the way, that's the other thing. If you email Berkeley and me and you're like, well, you guys, they're not being responsive, it's because we're in the middle of like the New York Stock Exchange. We're back and forth, zipping up and down the halls, and you just don't have time to take a look at you just don't, right? I mean, Berkeley, what do we go through?
Yeah.
All of that? Yeah.
Oh, it's impossible to keep up. So I always tell people to text me, and then I found lately that I can't even keep up with that. And then I say, if you haven't heard from me, just text me again. I mean, that's the best, calling. Some people are like, should I call you? And I'm like, no, because that's impossible too. Cause then you're in the middle of meetings and your phone's going off. But yeah, I mean, listen, all industries deal with busy seasons and that sort of thing. But yeah, this is like, it's like our tax season for accountants is what I like to equate it to. But you mentioned all the feedback we were getting from sections. I know that family law, adoption law, juvenile and children's law, they always have tons of bills that they're following, and they have a lot of feedback they have to get to us. I just want to say that George Spanos, who chaired family law section last year, and now K.O. Hurston is chairing it this year, but those two, that the team of those two have been so great and responsive. And George actually came up to Cordell Hall in the Capitol twice this week and knocked out with me like 5 bills at the same time. So that was huge. And it's just, sometimes it's just so nice to have an expert on that subject matter come with you and actually be able to answer the questions, walk through the bills, versus us trying to explain and relay those messages to, members. So,
well, not only are you right, but also to give my own props to George. He and KO, they fantastic job. We had a bill this week, a visitation bill, Senate Bill 609 by our good friend Becky Massey, who chairs Senate Transportation, but had this particular bill up in Senate Judiciary. And of course, every year we're always trying to watch out for any bill that tries to get a 50-50 visitation situation to divorced families, because we feel like, I think as a policy matter, that doesn't work. We've seen it not work in other states. It often is like pouring kerosene onto a fire. So we try to avoid that. We like the standard that we've got here in Tennessee, which is best interest of the child. But every year there's something that comes up that could potentially chip away with that. At that was not at all Senator Massey's intention. She just wanted to, she wanted to run something to try to make it a little more where judges might focus a little bit on trying to get maybe maximize the time that the parents could have respectively, while it's still keeping it situation where we didn't have a presumption and it's still in the best interest of the child. So that is a touchy subject. It's a very complicated subject. This is the way that goes, Berkley, and you saw it happen firsthand. The Senate Judiciary started at 3 o'clock. At 2:58, we got the email from George saying this is the language that we will go with. I go scrambling down the hall. I catch Senator Massey as she's on her way to Judiciary. She was one of the first bills up. We got it done. We got one word in there that she wanted to add in. And it's just, things happen that quickly. Within 5 minutes, it was up in committee. That's just the way it goes this time of year. And
right,
you got to roll with the punches. And what do they say? What was the old expression? The fog of war. There's just a lot of stuff that goes on very quickly, and you've got to make decisions, right on the, it's just right there, right on the dime. And then you got to react to it. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah. So that's the perfect example. And that bill, I think it was SB 609. It was a caption bill, but perfect example of everybody dropping everything, getting the language, and then figuring it out to where we didn't have to oppose the bill or fight it, in the committee, which is always ideal. So yeah.
And we've also got to take into account along those lines, Berkley, because I know where you're going next, but again, the sponsors and the personalities and the relationships that we have with them. And, do you really want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, or do you want to, try to, do we want to go nuclear war, scorched earth with somebody that's a really good friend and ally, or is there a third way? And that's what we're always trying to explore, while at the same time trying to preserve whatever it is that we need to preserve in the best interest of TBA. So there's always a struggle. And of course that came up too. I think there's a lot of people cranked up about the sovereign immunity issue. I'll let you talk about that, but that seems to be subsided for now.
Absolutely. So yeah, that bill is so interesting to me because it is truly a legal process bill, and it really gets into the weeds of constitutional law and how the state handles, constitutional challenges and legality.
It's Bill 1958 for those that are driving in and can't want to look it up. But
yeah, and we'll link all the bill numbers we talked about in the comments. I think we do that every time. But yeah, so John Stevens has a bill that SB 1958 that basically in 2018, a statute was passed, a legislation was passed, turned into a statute that did certain things that the Supreme Court has decided would allow different parties to sue the state of Tennessee without necessarily showing damages. And, I think some of the legislators went back and looked at that and said, well, that was not the legislative intent of this section. And we think you should always have to show damages because that's part of standing, having standing to sue. And they're worried that some of these big nationwide associations are suing the state of Tennessee about different legislation and saying it's unconstitutional or illegal when they themselves, that group they don't even have a presence in Tennessee. And so therefore, the legislators have drafted a bill that would say you cannot file suit against the state or a state official if you can't prove damages and these certain circumstances. If you're,
Really an issue of standing, right? That's really
right.
what it comes down
Yeah.
to.
So if there's a constitutional concern, that sort of thing. Now, you can, the current law, if you have a constitutional question about a bill, you still can sue based on the validity of the constitutionality of the bill. That's still an issue, but this would definitely reduce some of the suits that have been filed against the state.
And I think to that point, Berkley is I think the state would say, the proponents would say, number one, two things, because I don't want to interrupt you where you're going, but one, I think John Stevens would say this. He did say this is the most important piece of legislation we'll deal with this session. Okay, I'm burying the lead, but I want you to take the lead here. And then the second thing he would say is we want to take back the concept of sovereign immunity. Right.
Right. Which is in the Constitution. Specifically the Tennessee Constitution. So we're presented. That bill came up. There's a second bill that kind of goes in conjunction with that one. It talks about interlocutory appeals. That bill actually, so if the state then files a motion to dismiss based on this new statute, and says that the state can't be named in the suit, and then say a trial court judge decides, no, we disagree, the state should be named in the suit, then the second bill would allow the state to immediately appeal that that order on the motion to dismiss to the Court of Appeals. And the trial judge doesn't have to agree to hear it. The Court of Appeals doesn't have to agree to hear it. It's just an automatic of right issue. And so those two will supposedly go hand in hand. And the state's argument is that the reason we need this is because these issues affect the state of Tennessee, and we need to know immediately if it's a legitimate case and a legitimate issue if it's going to go forward. All right. So these two bills came up before Senate Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, and other people against the bill were concerned because they said, why would we allow local governments to be sued, but not the state and not state officials? And we think this is limiting citizens, right to sue the state. And there was a bunch of back and forth about it. And then it was late in the day. And I think that people were tired and, we're all tired. Legislators are tired, senators are tired. So in the end, the bill, specifically the interlocutory appeals bill, passed, but the sovereign immunity bill did not. It stayed in committee, and it was 4-4 with one member not voting. And that was a bit of a surprise after John Stevens said it was the most important bill of the year. Now, this week after that, the bill passed through, civil justice and the, House subcommittee. And so do I think that the Senate Judiciary Committee is going to reconsider that bill? I think there's a strong possibility.
Nancy, I think I was surprised by the vote count with some people. I think there were some people that, based on their questioning, you thought they might, well, one in particular that you thought might be more of a yes, but just trying to clarify for cleaner record, and then became a no because of some things that happened in committee. So we'll see. That one could come back, but for now, I think there's a lot of people that are ringing the alarm bell, and that's okay. I mean, that's certainly, you want people to be engaged on it. We got people engaged on both sides of it, so it'll be interesting. But for right now, that bill is it's mired in Senate Judiciary, and it can't go anywhere. And unless somebody decides to flip a vote, it's going to stay right there in Senate Judiciary. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
I thought that was really exciting. And I was sitting with our interns afterwards, and I said, y'all, that was so exciting. Like, that was so interesting. And I think that, they did not recognize at the time how interesting it was. But once I pointed it out,
they may not know now.
They may not ever. Nobody cares. Yeah. So anyway, that happened. That was a big bill running through, and we've been discussing it with like you said, a lot of people have been weighing in on it one way or another.
That's the classic example of one where people are like, is TBA going to do anything on this? And so but right now there's not. We'll see. I mean, that's a bigger decision and so forth. But
exactly.
Then you got, again, the flip side of that is, Berkeley, of course, you got people say the TBA needs to help us get this to pass. So, but it's not necessarily along party lines like a lot of issues. You got some conservative groups that are working against it. So that'll be an interesting one just to keep an eye on and see if it comes back up again.
That I know, because a few Republicans voted against it. It's
Sure.
very interesting. So,
Yeah.
okay. So speaking of bills rushing and running through session, another interesting, different thing that's happening is that next week, the House has decided they are only going to consider budget matters, and the regular committees are not meeting. I've been working with the state with the state legislature now, oh my gosh, like 8 years, but I've never seen anything like
No,
this.
I
Have
haven't.
you?
No,
Yeah.
this is probably my 21st session. Good gosh, I don't know how I'm still alive, but I don't know that
You must be so much older than I am, I guess.
I mean, it's I must be aging terribly too.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen that. I've seen where the Senate will take a week off at the end to let the House catch up a little bit, but
Yeah.
this is just, and a lot of people there's not a lot of consensus about why or how does that affect the timing. I think they're still planning to have a mid-April adjournment. So a lot of folks have got to run for reelection and get back to raising money and so forth. So, we'll see what happens. One thing to mention too, Berkley, I think two quick things from my perspective, and then I'll let you move on. I think one of them is you're going to start seeing things come up the next couple of weeks that, you're like, okay, what about this bill? What about that bill? Everything that's going to happen is probably going to happen in the next 6 weeks. I think the deadline, I was checking my calendar a minute ago, March the 10th, I believe, is the deadline to put anything on notice in Senate Judiciary. And so that's usually one of the last committees to close. So you've already got House or Senate Commerce is already calling for last calendars coming up here pretty soon. I think next week is the deadline to put anything on notice in that committee. So you starting to have a lot of those types of issues where committees are starting to wind down and shut down. So I think everything that's going to happen, it's going to be a lot of action the next 4 to 5 weeks. And then at that point, which will probably culminate with Day on the Hill. And then at that point, right after that, we'll start moving into budget issues. So that's the first thing I wanted to cover. The second thing is, again, a lot of questions. I got one today from our president Ed Langquist, former president Ed Langquist, who's, by the way, much more relaxed now that he's no longer president. So that's I think he can relate to what Heidi's going through this year, but he's enjoying it, being a little more relaxed. But Ed was asking about professional privilege tax. We get asked it every day. Again, a lot of conversations going on about that in the hallways and people talking about it. It's, as you all know, we've been dealing with this for 10, 15 years. It'll continue to be a live conversation. We'll talk about it a lot Day on the Hill. I still think it's going to realistically, probably in early in the next governor's tenure is what I would expect. I don't know that we'll have that in an election year, and certainly not in year 8 of Governor Lee's term. But anyway, I've been surprised before, but I think what we're doing is just trying to be in for the long haul and continuing to work on that and point to people the hypocrisy in that tax, which we all despise. So.
Absolutely. And that's a budget issue, exactly like you said. And the interesting thing too about next week is that the Senate is going to be having committee hearings. So the Senate always they run a little ahead anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out too. So, yeah, we're just, trying to get everything, getting the feedback back from the sections, weighing in with the legislators, seeing what we can amend, what we can do, having the conversations, understanding the point of the bills and what people are trying, the legislators are trying to accomplish and how we can help them in their goals without sacrificing the statutes and the code that already exists that our lawyers rely on. So I think that, it's just that time of year where it's just pretty much nonstop, constant. And you mentioned Day on the Hill, can't have a legislative update podcast without mentioning TBA Day on the Hill, which is March 18th. Yeah, which is a Wednesday. So I don't think registration's open yet, but it should be very soon. So look for that on our website.
I hope you like people. The hallways of Cordell Hall will be packed that day. I know of at least 4 or 5 other days on the Hill in addition to ours. So it'll be a good chance to see democracy at its finest. There'll be all kinds of interested people there to walk the halls and meet with legislators. It'll be a lot of
fun. Wear comfortable shoes because I find myself at least going up and down the stairs all the time because the elevators are so crowded. A, who likes a crowded elevator? Nobody. But B, it can take you 10 times as long to get, up to the 6th floor because you're stopping constantly and people are getting on and off. But Yeah, it's a great day and big Trump following that. So, which will be in Hotel Indigo again this year. And we are really looking forward to it. And it should be interesting. You'll hear more and more and then in the upcoming weeks. So let's see. Anything else, Brad?
All I got.
Okay.
Good
Well,
to have you back, Berkley. I feel like, when in Shawshank, when Andy came back to the prison population. It's good to
just
have you
like
back.
that. It's good to be back, and we miss Ashley, and hopefully it'll be 3 of us next week. We'll see. I don't know.
I don't know.
There's a lot going on. You know how I want to mention this real quick, and it's the end, so I can do it. So if you are tired of listening to us talk, you can log off now. But Brad, it's funny, we always give you a hard time, or we were like last year and saying Brad's so busy, Brad's so busy.
Yeah.
I think Ashley's so busy now. Ashley's so busy. I don't even see her. I call her to ask her a question about TBA, and she's like, I'm going into a meeting. I'll call you or text you. And, as soon as that you can have a break. And she never does, because she doesn't have a break. I mean, she has been
what you're saying. This is valuable, Berkley, because you're a partner with a very important client. So if Ashley's not being responsive, because I'm going to be gone Monday.
She's responsive.
No. If I'm going to be gone Monday and Tuesday to deal with our compensation committee and figure out what everybody's going to make going forward. So I think that probably cost her a little bit of money. That's going to work its way into her amount.
No.
I think everybody heard.
Brad,
Yeah,
listen.
No.
Ashley is working for clients. It's not like she's just like, I'm sorry.
You got to be responsive.
Yeah. No, she is. She's always responsive. And don't you worry. Whatever it is that I need to discuss with her about these bills, we always wind up talking about, and she obviously is very helpful.
I think everybody that's watching knows what's going on. That was a complaint. You lodged it. It's been received. And,
oh my God.
If you say something, Berkley, I take it to heart, and we'll deal with Ashley here after this call.
I think that Ashley is an important person who is very busy because she has great clients, and she's doing what she needs to do to take care of her clients, which is exactly
Thursdays and Fridays, as you know, you push the entire week into those days, and it's hard. It's just
right. I wasn't here last week, but anyway, it does make me laugh because I'm like, Ashley's busy. And
I appreciate, by the way, the compliment that, you're not, as you're more available this year, but trust me, my busy time is coming. So there's going to be a few weeks.
Oh my God. It makes me laugh. There's nothing I can say without it being like, insulting to both of you. So I don't even know why I brought it up.
I'm here for the insults of Ashley. I'm here.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm going to have to come now every week because there's no telling what y'all are going to say about me when I'm not here. I think the whole chainsaw thing is about as nice as it's going to get. So we'll see. Well,
and by the way, real quick, congratulations to soon to be Justice Kyle Hickson, who just got confirmed this week, I believe, if I'm right about that, to the Supreme Court. So, wow, we hadn't got into the judiciary appointments, and we ought to cover that next week and just give kudos to everybody that got confirmed. But I think Kyle was up this week, so we'll have to soon call him Mr. Justice.
Absolutely. Yes. Congratulations to him. That's exciting. Wow. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us, and we appreciate it. We will be back next week for our TBA Legislative Update podcast. And
you and I we'll see about Madam Non-Responsive.
Oh my God. All right. Yes. Okay. Thank you. See you next week.